Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel where biblical backgrounds matter. We're getting back into the book of Genesis and starting out in chapter 45 and verse 1 today. Now to recap, you'll remember that chapters 12 through 50 deal with patriarchal history. You'll remember that God made the promise to Abraham to multiply his seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered. Abraham begat Isaac. Isaac begat Jacob and Esau. Esau became Edom. Jacob became Israel. Esau was born first. He was the red and hairy one. The name Jacob means supplanter or deceiver. Jacob wrestled with the angel of God until he finally blessed him. And then Jacob basically spawned the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob had 2 wives. The first was Leah, the second was Rachel. And then they each had their own handmaid, which were Bilhah and Zilpah. And each one of them had borne him sons. Altogether he had 12. His 2 sons that were born to him by Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph had dreams that were given to him by God, which were revelations of God's divine plan. Joseph was sold into slavery in Egypt by his own brothers. He was cast into a pit. He was taken out of that pit and delivered into Egypt by the Ishmaelites. And then the famine came, as Joseph predicted. And we are now 2 years into that famine. Eventually, his father sent his older brothers, all 10 of them, into Egypt to buy food. But he would not send the youngest, Benjamin. After a certain amount of time, Joseph sent them back to get Benjamin, and after some begging and pleading, finally Israel sent Benjamin back with his older brothers to the land of Egypt. They sat down and ate with Joseph, but they did not recognize him. And he asked about the well-being of them and their father. Now we get into chapter 45, where he sends his brothers back to the land of Canaan to get their father Jacob. And Joseph also reveals himself to his brothers. Genesis chapter 45 and verse 1, Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, Make everyone go out from me. So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph was weeping over his brothers and their reunion with each other, and the fact that he just found out that their father was still alive. Verse 3, Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Does my father still live? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, Please come to me. So they came near. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not be therefore grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. Joseph knew all along that this was God's plan for his life being fulfilled. That God was using him to preserve life, to provide for the famine which had come into the land of Canaan, and which had overtaken all the earth. Verse 6. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. That speaks of 7 full years, which we could say parallels the Great Tribulation. 7 years of tribulation. 3.5 years of peace and quiet, and then 3.5 years when basically all hell breaks loose. But there's also a parallel later on in the Old Testament to the 70 weeks that Daniel prophesies. That's a deeper discussion for another time when we actually get into Daniel and into Revelation. Genesis 45:7, and God said, And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Joseph speaks of the providence and the sovereignty of the Almighty God. How God is sovereign over the whole situation, and how he had it all planned out from the very beginning to provide for his family during a time of famine. Verse 9, Joseph says to his brothers, Hurry up and go to my father and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children, your children's children, your flocks, and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there are still 5 years of famine. And behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. So you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that you have seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father down here. From chapter 12 of Genesis to about chapter 37, verse 2, you have the patriarchal history of Israel and Palestine. chapter 37, verse 3, all the way to the end of Genesis, chapter 50, and verse 26, you had the patriarchal history of Israel in Egypt. But really, you could say that the patriarchal history of Israel in Egypt starts in about chapter 44, because it's right about there that Joseph's brothers sit down and dine with him. And in chapter 45 and 46, they go back and get their father, Jacob, who by this time has been given the name Israel. And that was his name until his death. Getting back to chapter 45 and verse 15, then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them, and after that his brothers talked with him. This was a sign of affection and forgiveness. Because remember that Joseph was sold by his brothers, and because he knew that this was all part of God's plan, he forgave them. He had mercy on them, just as Jesus Christ has mercy on all who believe in him and his holy name and his atoning blood for salvation. Verse 16, now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. So it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your animals and depart, go to the land of Canaan. Bring your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you are commanded, do this, take carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. Bring your father and come. Also do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them carts according to the command of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. Remember that by this time, by the will of God, Joseph was only second in command to Pharaoh, but he was in charge of all the rest of the people of Egypt. Verse 22, he gave to all of them, to each man, changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. And he sent to his father these things, 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed. And he said to them, see that you do not become troubled along the way. A donkey was what one rode during times of peace. During a time of war, each man rode a colt. So in sending the donkeys out with his brothers, Joseph was making sure that they and their father came back to him in peace. And he said to them, see that you do not come back, that you do not become troubled along the way. Let's read verse 24 again. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed. And he said to them, see that you do not become troubled along the way. Joseph was wishing peace on his brothers and not harm. This can be taken as a message of salvation, which is God's plan. That's God's will. Verse 25, Then they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father, and they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart stood still because he did not believe them. Jacob believed that Joseph was dead, so he was still mourning over him. Verse 27, But when they told him all the words which Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. Then Israel said, It is enough. Joseph my son is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. Israel by this time had become an old man, well advanced in age. He was a few hundred years old by this time. Getting into chapter 46, we have Jacob's journey into Egypt. And we'll do the first 27 verses. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I also will surely bring you up again. And Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives in the carts which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. So they took their livestock and their goods which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him. Pharaoh gave Joseph the authority to send back all the transportation that his whole family needed to get from the land of Canaan to the land of Egypt. This transportation were the donkeys. Because remember that the donkey symbolized peace. Verse 7, His sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. Now these were the names of the children of Israel, Jacob and his sons, who went to Egypt. Reuben was Jacob's firstborn, the son of Reuben The sons of Reuben were Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon were Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Gershon would be the land where Israel would dwell. Remember that Israel was formerly known as Jacob. This would also be the land where Moses would later dwell. Verse 12, the sons of Judah were Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar were Tola, Puvah, Job, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun were Sered, Elon, and Jalil. These were the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padanaram, with his daughter Dinah. All the persons, his sons and his daughters, were 33. The sons of Gad were Ziphion, Haggai, Shunai, Eshban, Eri, Aradai, and Areli. The sons of Asher were Jimnah, Ishua, Ishui, Beriah, and Sarah, their sister. And the sons of Beriah were Heber and Malchiel. These were the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob, 16 persons. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, were Joseph and Benjamin. You'll remember that the promise of God continued from Abraham to Isaac to Israel, to multiply them as the sands of the sea. God chose Israel, a small nation, to make them great, to bring forth the Messiah. Verse 20, and to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. Manasseh and Ephraim were the last two tribes of the 12 tribes of Israel. Because remember, God's plan for Joseph had been fulfilled. Levi was set apart by God for priesthood. Verse 21, the sons of Benjamin were Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gerah, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Muppim, Huppim, and Ard. These were the sons of Rachel, who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. The sons of Dan were Husham. The sons of Naphtali were Jaziel, Gunai, Jezer, and Shilem. These were the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and she bore these to Jacob, 7 persons in all. All the persons who went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2 persons. All the persons of the house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70. It's interesting to me in verse 26, all the persons who went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. There's 66 books in the Bible, which is the written word of God. Verse 27, and the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2 persons. All the persons of the house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70. And Daniel in the Old Testament prophesied 70 weeks until the Great Tribulation. And that's all I've got for this lesson. If it was any help to you at all, give the video a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Until next time, God bless. And remember, biblical backgrounds matter.